Hello, my little flower blossoms. It's me, Heather, here at Goldstone Books. Well, spring is in the air. The days are brighter, the flowers are poking their sleepy heads out of the soil, and the weather is finally getting warmer in Wales. Is it warm where you are? Today I thought I would tell you the Greek myth of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, and her daughter Persephone. It's a great way to learn all about the cycle of the seasons. Are you ready? Are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then let's begin. At the beginning of the world, there was no winter. All year round was perfect for farming and harvesting. The rain fell, the sun shone, the flowers bloomed, and the crops grew lush and ripe. In charge of it all was Demeter, goddess of the harvest. It was Demeter who made the world so green, and the people depended on her for their food. By her side was her daughter Persephone, as beautiful as a wildflower. Everyone loved Persephone, but she was adored by her mother. Deep underground lived Hades, god of the underworld. When people died, they went from the world to the underworld, and Hades was god of the dead. He lived alone in the darkness, with nothing but the souls of the dead for comfort, but he longed for beauty and color and companionship. He thought Persephone was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, and he loved her with the whole of his dark heart. But Hades knew that Demeter would never allow her daughter to marry the dark god of the underworld. But he felt sure he could win Persephone's heart if only he could make her his bride. And so Hades went to Zeus, king of the gods, to ask for help, and Zeus told him what he must do. The next day, Demeter and Persephone descended to the earth. Demeter went to tend the crops, and Persephone wandered into a nearby garden. She was struck with the beauty of one particular flower, but no sooner had she picked it, but the ground beneath her feet began to tremble and quake. A great crack opened up in the earth, and Hades and his chariot of black horses emerged from the underworld. Before she could even scream, he plucked Persephone like a flower and carried her down, down, down into the darkness. And then the chasm closed over again, and the world was quiet once more. When Demeter discovered her daughter was missing, she was inconsolable. She began to search the world for Persephone, neglecting the earth she loved so much. Flowers died, crops withered, fruit failed to ripen, and the soil became a chalky dust. People and animals were starving, but Demeter didn't notice. But their cries were heard by Zeus, and he knew he had to do something or everyone on earth would starve to death. Down in the underworld, Persephone missed warmth and sunlight and the flowers of the world above, but mostly she missed her mother. Hades could see that she was sad, and so he built Persephone a beautiful garden made of precious jewels which twinkled in the darkness. It made Persephone smile. Hades was always kind to Persephone, and she admired the way he looked after the souls of the dead. She asked herself, could she become queen of the underworld? After a few months, Persephone had fallen in love with Hades. He was not the monster she once thought he was, and she embraced her role, helping people cross from the land of the living to the world of the dead. But she knew sooner or later her mother would find her, and so together they made a pact. Hades presented Persephone with a piece of fruit, a ripe pomegranate, because they both knew the law which said anyone who consumes food in the underworld may not return to the world above. And so Persephone ate 6 of the pomegranate seeds that sparkled like jewels in the darkness, so that she could stay by the side of her husband. Meanwhile, back in the world, the earth was crumbling to dust, and so Zeus sent Hermes, the messenger of the gods, down into the underworld to bring Persephone back to her mother before it was too late. But when Hermes got to the underworld, he was surprised at what he saw. He expected to find a sorrowful, grief-stricken maiden, but instead he was met by a radiant queen. Hermes insisted that Persephone return to the world above, but Persephone was conflicted. Of course, she loved her mother, but she was a wife now with responsibilities. The dead depended on her. But she agreed to go and speak to Zeus, and when Zeus asked where she would like to live, Persephone told him about eating the pomegranate seeds and her desire to stay with her husband. Well, Demeter was furious that her daughter would choose her husband over her own mother. She was sure Hades had tricked Persephone, and she made it clear in no uncertain terms that if Persephone did not return to her, she would never, ever tend the earth again, and everyone would starve to death, and she would be glad of it. And so it was decided that Persephone must split her time between her mother and her husband. 6 months of the year, Persephone would live in the underworld with her husband and reign as queen of the dead, and the other 6 months she would live on the earth with her mother. 6 months of the year, when Persephone reigned in darkness, Demeter wept. The leaves fell from the trees, the cold winds whipped the land, and her tears fell as rain and snow. Then, in spring, when Persephone returned, the earth burst into life with Demeter's joy. New shoots appeared, flowers bloomed, crops ripened under a golden sun. And so it was year after year, cycle after cycle. And this is why the world is greening up, because Persephone has returned to her mother. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned and you can hear more about the tale of Hades, Persephone, and Demeter. Bye! There are many versions of the tale of Demeter and Persephone, and depending on where you live, there are different ways to pronounce Demeter. She can also be called Demeter or even Demeter. But no matter how you pronounce it, all the stories deal with a young woman forging her own destiny to the dismay of her fiercely protective, and some might say overbearing, mother. In Homer's version, Persephone is secretly slipped a pomegranate seed by Hades. He tricks her, forcing her to stay with him against her will. But in Ovid's version, Persephone eats the fruit unknowingly. She is simply hungry and does not realize that by consuming it, she will be tied to the underworld. There is no story in Greek mythology in which Persephone willingly walks into the underworld out of compassion for the souls of the dead or love for Hades. But there is a musical called Hadestown where she meets Hades and chooses to run away with him to the underworld to get married. I wanted to write a version that retained some of the original elements, like the kidnapping of Persephone, but also wanted one that reflected the modern sentiments of Hadestown, that Persephone could fall in love and choose a life for herself. It is possible to love both your mother and your husband. Oh, and remember the part where Hades went and spoke to Zeus, who suggested he kidnap Persephone? Well, Zeus was also the father of Persephone, so he was suggesting the kidnapping of his own daughter. But that's Zeus for you. I hope you've enjoyed the story of Demeter, Persephone, and Hades. Thanks for watching.